Hello, and back again. So uh, after a few weeks of getting feedback from a whole bunch of people, it finally looks like it's definitely ready. I got a bunch of confirmations of the quality of it this past week, and um, overall, everyone really likes where it's at. So I'm happy. I'm glad. So to catch up, uh, earlier in March, I came up with the concept, came up with the characters, then created loose plot beats, and then towards the middle of March, we started writing. Got a first draft done by the first week of April, then did about 5 different drafts until we got to the final draft. So now I'm happy with that. Uh, so the goal now that I have the whole thing written, is to kind of go back to that script and to kind of to break it down, to look at it differently, because the way that I approach it is that I do I do every single section separately, focused on the specific section that I'm working on, trying not to think of all the other parts. So when it comes to the acting, I only think of the acting. When it comes to the writing, I only think of the writing. Maybe a little bit of visual stuff, but mainly writing. And then when I go into the directing, I only think of directing. So what I mean by that is that when it comes to directing and choreographing scenes and choreographing frames and everything involved with that, I am okay with changing things. So even though a scene is probably written a certain way, and there's a specific feel to it, if there needs to be a slight change of dialogue or even the way that the scene kind of works, as long as it keeps the integrity of the scene, then I have to make that shift so that it gets the point across differently, because the visual aspect and the way that you direct and the realities of what you have to direct with is is out of your control sometimes, so you can only do with what you got. And so it's better to focus on the specific task that you have on your hand. So for me now, the next step is shot listing. Took a few days break, just because I've just been a little overwhelmed, because my acting class is starting back up again for Zoom, and then with all this Corona stuff, I'm currently in the middle process of moving because can't really afford rent at where we're filming at. So we're moving in with a friend in their apartment, and we should be done moving by the end of this week. And so that also kind of like throws a little thing into the filming, because originally when we didn't think we were going to move, the whole idea was to film in the apartment that we have now. But because now we're shifting and changing to a different setting, a different apartment, I'm going to be filming there now because I have no choice, and I need to now adjust what it's going to be and how to film it. It's not too difficult. It was written in a way that it could be filmed in any apartment, but I have to think about layout. I have to think about specifically what was intentionally kind of thought of, potential framing devices, but shifting that around a little bit. It's always something. So fuck it, gonna do it whatever way I gotta do it. But that's another thing that I have to deal with, just the whole process of moving into a new apartment and then settling in. So that's probably gonna get in the way of writing my shot list and then filming it. But you only got what you got, which is fine. Just gotta take it one step at a time. So now I'm gonna be focusing on shot listing, and what I like to do is just go back to basics and remind myself, like, what is the goal of this scene, this moment, these people here. I've written, I have like this kind of style guide that I have for me when I direct, just because I want to remind myself how to direct, because after every single project, I don't remember how to do it. I feel like what the fuck am I doing? I don't know. And so I've like each time I rewrite like my principles that I've kind of built up over the years as I've made films. So some things that remind me when I'm shot listing or when I come to filming is like when it comes to the frame, you know, suffering and love are together. So for me, the scenes that I've noticed that I tend to like and that affect me are when people are suffering in films, they're put together so you can see them bonding over this emotional experience. When there's conflict, typically they're apart, unless it's like an action scene. But even then, the framing can allow for a rhythmic divide between them. But generally, they're apart. Things for me to think about when filming scenes, like for physical way that I'm filming, I need to think of who is the primary focus, what is their object of interest in the scene, so I know what they're looking at, feeling at. So then, like that kind of branches off into what do they want, and that branches over to a different one. What are they looking at? What are they touching? What matters to them now? That allows me to kind of pivot into their point of view, into their focus as I'm trying to see what matters to the scene and to the shot and to that person. And then in the non-physical realm, I need to keep in mind what is the emotion, what emotion must be heightened through, you know, characteristics of framing and cameras and filming devices that we can put in there. Also, what is the unspoken language and what is the subtext that must be communicated? Those two kind of parallel each other because they kind of do the same thing, but it's always a good thing to remind myself, like, what is the thing that's trying to be said, and how do you say it without words, so that even though there's an action of doing and trying to say something, to have an objective and do something for the actor, and I'm trying to show that through the camera movements, but also what is the emotional part of that you can also include. And generally speaking, I like a camera and a frame that is from someone's point of view. And I know that kind of it has different meanings for different directors and different filmmakers, but for me, it's just I like to let my camera wander a little bit. Slightly longer takes doesn't mean like a one or anything like that. It's just instead of 3 seconds, maybe it's like 4 or 5 seconds, just to look around as their point of view. So I have like a device that I've kind of set up called dynamic framing, and it's just a set of principles, and it's just when you move, you're creating a set of frames that link together and create one continuous shot. So you're planning different frames in one shot, so that instead of having 3 different cuts or 3 different frames, you're just using them as dynamic key points to get to with your camera and your framework, to make one longer take or a little bit of a longer take, and knowing that these are the specific frames / cuts that you'll be linking together through that. So generally speaking, you're going from medium and you're going from a larger shot to a smaller shot, or a smaller shot to a larger shot, but also the rules don't have to be, there's nothing specific about those rules. All rules can be broken once you're familiar with your craft. You just can do whatever you want, but these are things to think about. The environment is split into frame quadrants. So, foreground, background, and even in that, there's different frames in there. So in a mid shot, there's a whole series of different frames that you can have in there. So when you move closer, that mid shot turns into a bus shot, to a bus close and a close, and those are different frames within that one shot. So instead of cutting, the whole Alfred Hitchcock's thing of that cut to this cut, it's just these 2 frames connected through that. And of course, my remember is that there's one scene, so there's one point of view. So when I get to a scene, I have to figure it out again. Even though I wrote it, I need to figure out again whose point of view am I really behind. And then the camera work is based off someone's point of view. So based off of whose point of view I discover or I realize or I know, then I have to see how the world is seen through their point of view by seeing how to reflect that emotionally and physically through the camera work and all that stuff. So I always have to remind myself that. And I oftentimes go back to films that I've looked up to and try to see how they do their framing in terms of how do they do the things that they do that affect me as a filmmaker and as a person. So some films that I really like and appreciate for the filmmaking is Beautiful by Alejandro Inarritu. That is a very tough film, but I think it's excellent in terms of having a point of view, which is the lead character, Javier Bardem's character, and using his point of view and his focus for things that catches his attention and things that matter, and letting the camera show you that and going back to him, and while using like kind of traditional film techniques as well. So I really like that. Then there's Blue Valentine. There's a lot of looser cinematography that I really like. I mean, it's looser in the sense of like, whoa, it's moving around, but it's very tight in terms of planning and what it's doing. So that's what I'm doing now. As I'm going back, reminding myself that, maybe looking through some of my notes that I have of other films, because I take studious notes of a lot of films that I watch. Oftentimes I have notes of frame by frame and time-stamped moments throughout the entire movie, so I don't watch it and then take notes. I watch, pause, watch, pause, watch, pause. And so I have lots of notes about like why certain things are decided, or I think, and why it affects me. And I can go back to those and reread them and try to, meditate on that and see like could that work for me in terms of what I'm trying to say about this one specific scene. I'm not necessarily trying to copy anyone ever. What I'm trying to do is just learn the principles behind the scenes of the movies and scenes that I like, and see if any of those principles apply to me. Because everyone's style is different. What's important to them is different as artists and directors and writers and actors, and so you just have to know whether somebody else's thing works for you. It's kind of like somebody realizing that someone that has like eaten a certain thing all their life, and then someone's like, hey, why don't you try this? So you're like, I don't know, I don't like that type of food. And they're like, no, try it. You try it. You're like, wow, this is really good, and then it kind of opens up a whole new avenue for you. That's the same thing that I always try to do, is keep my mind open for things that work and affect me, and see if that's appropriate for what I'm trying to do. Because each film project is very different. Although thematically or maybe even emotionally they're similar, the goals for each of them are different. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. I have no idea how long this will take. I'd like to go slow, but maybe 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks, if I like really fucking put my head in there and do it, and just do. Honestly, I always find myself facing anxiety and fear and doubt whenever I move on to another section. And this is the same thing as here. I had to convince myself to even start shot listing, but it's just because I'm so nervous, because I don't know if I remember how to do this, if I can do it. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm just fucking pointing a camera, whatever, and then making things happen in front of it. Yeah. Going through that emotional process right now, because I remind myself that I can do it, and I do it, and I do it very well. And so I'm just taking my time. It is possible to do it in 2 weeks. I'll fucking kill myself to do it, but I probably could do it. I've done it before with a different short where I just like really like stuck it out with 11-hour days on top of my work for money. So I've been able to do that. But I don't know, maybe I should be more gentle with myself this time. So then that's the end of, once I finish that, then it's going to be shifting to the acting process, and that'll just have a whole different series of stuff to consider, because then that's where I have to do the processes that I've learned how to do as an actor, memorizing and personalizing a lot of it, even though it is already personal, and then finding an actor or two to kind of come in, because there's 2 other voices that really stand out in this. I could reach out to other actor friends, which is great, but I'm not really worried about that yet. I already got someone who's agreed to come on over and safely help film when it comes time to do that. But it seems like everything's moving along. Not really much else to say. So again, don't know when I'll have another one of these because I have no fucking idea, because quarantine, moving, jobs, all the stuff, it's all just kind of a whirlwind of shit. But my goal is, of course, it's always important to have deadlines. So my goal is obviously to have this done before September. I'd love to fucking have this done in June. I'd love it to have it be done in June. You know, I'm not sure when it comes to score. I have someone that will be working on the score, but I'm not sure how long that will take, because then we'll have to talk with each other over email, see notes, adjust, and figure out what this movie really feels like musically. Because I know what it feels like from my own playlist and stuff, and I can give that to them. But again, it's a constant discovery making a film. Nothing is ever set in stone. Everything kind of shifts like a piece of jello, or my stomach fat is kind of blah 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 blah. So nothing's ever done that because I don't have a six-pack at all. Maybe my brother does, but not me. But here, this is where we're at. So hopefully my goal is June. And if you're wondering why September, it's because that's when Sundance is. Always gotta pretend I'm gonna get into Sundance. Maybe I will. Who knows? All I know is I'm gonna make it as if it is gonna go into Sundance. So that's always my fake pretend goal every single year, is to make something around that. And so far I've made something that has been done around that time period. I don't necessarily make that, specific September 23rd goal, but it's what pushes me to finish and work hard faster. Still trying to focus on quality though. So we'll see, hopefully I'll be back to talk about the acting section, and then talk about my process there. And then I'd love to film this thing. So close. We're so fucking close. Anyway, talk to you all later. Bye.